Hello and welcome to the Soil Health Boot Camp and Applications to Vegetable Production webinar series. This webinar will cover pollinators and beneficials that may be encountered in vegetable production systems. My name is Raymond Cloyd. I'm a professor and extension specialist in horticultural entomology, plant protection in the Department of Entomology at Kansas State University. There are a number of important pollinators that we need to be aware of, including bees, such as honeybees and bumblebees, native or wild bees, and even butterflies and moths. The primary pollinators of most vegetable crops are the honeybee, Apis mellifera, and several species of bumblebees, Bombus. Therefore, it is important to preserve these pollinators and, most importantly, not expose them to pesticides. In addition to honeybees and bumblebees, there are a number of native or so-called wild bee species that may serve as pollinators, including the alfalfa leaf-cutting bee, as shown in these images. So, now we will discuss biological control. First of all, what is biological control? Well, in general, biological control is the use of beneficials, which includes insects and mites, or natural enemies, such as parasitoids and predators, that regulate insect and or mite pest populations. Natural enemies will not eradicate an insect and or mite pest population. The success of biological control is contingent on maintaining insect and or mite pest numbers at levels low enough to minimize plant damage. It is important to know that the key is regulation of insect and or mite pest populations, which is obtained by understanding pest natural enemy interactions and the ability to maintain a balance between the natural enemy population and the insect or mite pest population. The two main types of natural enemies are parasitoids on the left and predators on the right. These are the beneficials that are responsible for regulating insect or mite pest populations, subsequently reducing the level of damage to vegetable crops. The two categories of natural enemies are specialists and generalists. Specialist natural enemies feed on only one insect or mite prey or host, or particular life stage, such as egg, larva, nymph, or adult of the prey. In general, parasitoids tend to be specialists. Generalist natural enemies feed on a variety of insect or mite prey or host, and also tend to feed on different life stages, such as the egg, larva, nymph, and or the adult of a particular prey. In most cases, predators are generalists. This image shows a parasitoid female inserting an egg into an insect pest, in this case, a caterpillar. What will happen is that the egg will hatch and the parasitoid larva will consume the internal contents of the insect pest. Eventually, the larva inside the insect pest will pupate, then emerge from the dead insect pest as a new adult. This image shows an adult parasitoid that emerged from a dead or mummified aphid. Okay, let's discuss predators. There are a number of predators that may be present in vegetable production systems, including ground beetle, ladybird beetle, green lacewing, predatory mites, damselbug, and hoverfly. This image shows an adult ground beetle. Ground beetle adults can be quite prevalent in vegetable production systems. The adults feed on caterpillars and other insect pests. This image shows both the larva and adult of the ladybird beetle. Both life stages are predaceous, feeding on aphids and other soft-bodied insect pests. A green lacewing larva on the left and adult on the right are shown in this image. Only the larva is predaceous, feeding on aphids and other soft-bodied insect pests. The adult does not directly feed on insect pests, but needs flowering plants that provide pollen and nectar as a food source. There are a number of predatory mites that feed on spider mites and other soft-bodied insect or mite pests. The primary means of detecting predatory mites is to shake plant leaves over a white sheet of paper and look for the predatory mites. Predatory mites will be actively moving, whereas pest spider mites will be moving much more slowly. Damselbug adults, as shown in this image, feed on a variety of insect pests including aphids, caterpillars, leafhoppers, lygus bug or tarnished plant bug, nymphs, and asparagus beetle eggs and larvae. This image shows both a larva and adult hoverfly. Similar to green lacewing, only the larva is predaceous, feeding primarily on aphids. The adults do not directly feed, but require certain flowering plants that provide pollen and nectar as a food source. Conservation biocontrol is a common practice that includes any activity designed to protect, attract, or maintain existing populations of natural enemies. The basic approach is to provide plants that attract natural enemies and supply them with a food source such as pollen and nectar, especially for the adults. This image shows some common plants that are attractive to natural enemies. These plants can be incorporated into vegetable production systems. However, in order to continually attract pollinators, especially bees, and natural enemies throughout the season, always incorporate and group together flowering plants that provide pollen and nectar from spring through fall. For example, this image shows a common practice of incorporating sweet alyssum into a lettuce crop. The sweet alyssum attracts and retains hoverfly adults. As mentioned previously, the larvae of the hoverfly feed on aphids. This image shows a parasitoid called Scalia dubia feeding on wild chives and soldier beetle adults mating. Many flowering plants not only serve as a primary or alternative food source, but may also provide refuge and mating sites for natural enemies. Another production practice that may preserve natural enemies is cover cropping, which provides refuge and overwintering sites for certain natural enemies. This image lists some resources that you can refer to for more information on pollinators and beneficials associated with vegetable production systems. Well, that concludes this webinar on pollinators and beneficials. I do hope that you enjoyed the webinar and were able to obtain some useful information. If you have any questions or comments associated with the webinar, please do not hesitate to contact me. My contact information was provided in the title image.